things aren't always as they seem.
Looking back on all the chances that I missed, some I held, some slipped away. One street over where my memories exist, I wondered what would change, I really couldn't say. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn. Because one street over there's a life I could have known that would have kept me from the one I had today.
It's still morning. Not yet. This is like and this is one street over. This is one street over. Snowing yet. Everybody's like, where's the snow? Our principal, Dr. Osborne, is going, see, I told you, bless her. I love her. It was so funny. I was talking to her earlier in the week because we're supposed to be having our winter graduation this weekend. And she's one, she wants to get this stuff done, stay on schedule because we got a lot to do, and I get it. And I told her, I said, you know, this is coming in here, and they're going, and she goes, just stop that. Just stop that. And we're having it unless it's really snowing. And she was, I mean, she's a country girl, you know, and she's like, we're gonna get this done. And as I was watching the forecast, I was telling, you know, in my class, we talk about the aspects of media and the responsibility of media to advise the public about this kind of stuff. And I said, I was a traffic reporter for 28 years. If we had had this kind of a forecast coming, I would be telling you to stay home on Friday because of the experiences we had, like we talked about. Yeah, Bill Jones is in the house, y'all. Bill Jones is in the house. And I said, I would be telling you to stay home Friday because of those experiences we were talking about yesterday. Brian Pooley was in here and shared a memory of being in a meeting out in Brentwood and coming out, and it was just like, you know, it was clear. He went into his meeting a couple hours later, came out, and he couldn't get home, had to walk home, had to abandon his car in a parking lot. We've had, I remember there was hundreds of cars abandoned on the sides of the roads because people will say, I mean, you get out this morning, you're like, I'm going to go on in and get some work done. Well, you better pay attention because it could come in here very fast and you could get stranded very quickly because they're talking about this being a very wet, heavy snow, and it's going to be super slick. And so are we still getting it, Bill?
Yeah, we're going to get it.
I know. This morning, I had told my husband, I said, well, you're going to have to get up and drive me in. We were in Kentucky until super late last night. We went up to the Graves County High School. I'm part of Graves County. Mayfield's our county seat. We've talked a lot about that. My nephew even works for the city of Mayfield. Bless his heart. He got off work at 5 p.m. yesterday, and they called him back in at midnight because they're getting the roads ready in case they get this mess. So I was part of one of the basketball teams that went to the regions in our little bitty county school, Lowe's High School. We went to the region, went to the state tournament, and that's a big accomplishment for a little school. And so they had our team out there, and then Sedalia was another one that went to the region. They went in 76, we went in 78, and I didn't realize we were actually ranked number one in the state that year. And we ended up getting beat first round, but that's just inexperience of not being in those kinds of tournaments. But we were really good, and a bunch of really good girls, and getting to see most of them last night. We had a couple that we'd lost. We lost Tina, and we lost Tammy Simmons and Tina Reeves, but for the most part, most of us were there. Our coaches were there. That was just the coolest thing, and getting to just see them and talk to them. But then I went to my brother's house and my sister-in-law's house. I hadn't seen them through the holidays. We were there until 10 o'clock, so we didn't get home until after midnight. So I'm a little tired, and I told Mark, I said, it's not snowing.
I'm too old for that. I can't do that.
Well, I let my husband sleep in because, bless his heart, he had to drive me to, Mayfield and back last night. And so I was like, it's not snowing. Just stay in bed. And Bill and I have got this. But it is interesting as you look at things and you go, okay, where's the snow? And as I'm looking at the radar, is it going to be rain, Bill?
See that spot in the middle is nothing there?
I know.
That's us.
Well, that's so crazy because
see all the red around it. The red is
and
dancing on the north and south.
And you were calling it the snow dome.
Well, that's just I don't know if that's a weather term. Anyway, Rob Cole Weather, it's another weather site on Facebook, called it that this morning. I thought, well, that's I've heard of rain domes, heat domes.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good term.
Okay.
But that's what it is. It's just, I don't know what causes it.
Yeah.
But it's just like somebody's put a dome over us and it's not snowing over us, but everywhere else it is.
How funny.
Strange.
It is very weird.
Weather's never 100% predictable.
Well, and that's one thing, and that's what my principal, Dr. Osborne, was telling me. She goes, we just don't know what it's going to do, LaVern, because they said we were going to get 8 inches of rain the other day, and we only got, this kind. I get it, because, growing up on a farm, you watch that kind of stuff, but, this one is, it's like I told my kids, I said, when we were talking about the traffic and all that kind of thing in my past experience, I said, I'll tell you right now. I said, if we come to school tomorrow, I'll bring pies and every one of the classes can put a pie in my face if we're in school. And so then they started going, we want to come to school. And they said, you'd really let us do that? I said, yep, I will. And then one of them says, well, if I bring a cake, can I put that in your face? I said, yep, bring it. Come on. So I knew if we went today, I better go with spare clothes and all this. And I hadn't even talked to my principal about that. She'd be like, I'm going to get you. But anyway, we're CTE. We're career teachers. And so we have a little bit, we work in a little different, we work in a little different capacity. So you just,
Well, the funny thing, everybody can access the radar on the internet.
Yeah.
Right. It's so fun. Just Robertson County.
I know.
No snow anywhere.
I know.
No snow in Robertson County, but snow everywhere else.
I know, it's crazy.
Weird.
It is very weird. And I'm sitting here looking at it going, okay, I'm ready for some snow, y'all. But is that green that I'm seeing right here? Is that rain?
Yeah.
Okay, so it hasn't turned to snow yet.
Some places it hadn't.
Okay.
It's just 30 degrees outside.
Yeah,
so
I know.
It's not. It's going to melt off. I thought it was going to stay colder, and it didn't.
Well,
So
but the temps today are not going. Let's see.
it's 30 outside. And
It's 30, and then let's see here.
not going to get any colder, I don't think.
Yeah,
today.
I was looking at I'm looking at it's saying it's going up to 34 possibly.
Yeah. So
I don't know, guys. Man,
we're behind on the snow, but it's coming. Heavier stuff is coming in midday,
okay.
and it'll end by sundown.
Okay. Yeah. So we may not get quite as much as we first thought, you think? Or
I don't know. You could. It just
who knows? Who knows?
some of the dome may move somewhere else.
Yeah, that's just it. But yeah, it really didn't feel that cold when I got up this morning. I was like, okay, it doesn't feel that, because the original forecast, and I'm sure everybody's like, yeah, they're backpedaling now. They're saying you're going to get 7 inches. Now they're back. No, we're just saying the weather is, it is one of those things. You just never know what you're going to get. But the forecast looks really, really concerning. And so, do stay in if you can. Now, see, you figure at 1 p.m. we've got like 33 for the projected high. So, we got some rain in with this stuff, it's just very edgy. One 1 degree here and there can make all the difference in the world, you guys.
That has happened in the past.
You better believe it. So my arc, because you look at it, as we were looking at the temperatures and some of the projections yesterday, I was like, man, it's going to be, if we get more than a couple of inches, it's going to take days to get that to melt off. But, you look at the high tomorrow going 34, I don't know. It may not end up being quite the event that we thought it was going to be, I suppose. I don't know. Would you say that? Or
being a professional forecaster, weather service, isn't it funny you get paid for being wrong?
My husband, he really, because we were in roofing, we were roofing contractors for 20 years. And that's probably one of the hardest. I was not sad when we finally closed the doors, because that was such a stressful time. Because you just never, you were always on call, because if you had something, start leaking, and if there was any water in a building, it was always blamed on the roof, and it could have been the windows, the brick. We had a time with a building we worked on, a big building, and it was their brick that was leaking, and they kept pointing to the roof, and it was not the roof. And man, we had
I know a building in town that did that.
So, do what now?
I know a building in town that happened. Flat
really?
roof building, and it was water running down the brick, and wasn't the roof.
Wasn't the roof. And we've had that happen on windows and things like that.
Several people working on it. They couldn't figure it out.
And we kept telling them it wasn't us. And it was a flashing issue with the brick.
Right.
And we finally, if I'm not mistaken, this has been so many years ago, I think we finally figured it out and convinced them, and then they let us fix it. But by that time, we'd lost so much money on that thing. Because it was one that you plan on roofing, you have your set time, and it was just one that, and it was one that I think in our memories we're like, okay, yeah, I think we're done, and ready to step away. Paul Rainey is saying it's 28 degrees right now in Hendersonville. He says it is snowing now, And AccuWeather's saying it's going to start in about 15 minutes. So good morning, Paul. How are you doing, buddy? And he's my go-to for my fire department and all that, because he was 41 years on the. And I thought it was so cool yesterday, him saying that David Martin, who is Jack Martin's son, is driving the engine that Paul drove. And I was thinking about that coming in. Paul, how long do those engines last? Because Paul's been retired a few years. I mean, I forget.
Springfield just bought a new one. It's $850,000.
I know they're so expensive,
And
but I wonder how long they stay on
think
the road.
those things are starting and going fast before warming up anything. They're getting it and then shutting off. It's it's rough on an
it must
engine.
be.
It's
But I wonder how long those things were on the road. Because when he told me David's driving the engine he drove, and I just can't remember when Paul retired. He's been retired for a bit. It
My
hadn't been a
brother,
terribly long amount of time.
years
but-
ago, bought a ladder truck.
really?
Fire truck with ladders on it. And he bought it down in Florida, I think, and drove it up here. And it was an old one. It didn't have a top
Yeah.
on the cab.
Yeah. We had one.
It
My dad.
rained on him.
We actually have. I don't know if it's still on the farm. My brother, he owns all the farm stuff now. But my daddy had an old. I've got pictures of my kiddos on an old antique fire engine. It's not super old, but it was. I think it was an open one too, if I'm not mistaken. But I've got pictures of my kids when they were little, like 5, 6 years old, climbing all over that thing. And Daddy loved stuff like that. And I don't know, my brother may be long gone. I don't know, because once Daddy passed away,
I've got some
he
history
moved
knowledge
stuff
about
off.
our fire department, and way back it's really unusual.
What like you want to go ahead and tell us, since
Well,
it's not snowing yet, so we
no.
don't have the weather to talk about.
The first fire truck, they had two apparatuses. When they had to call a fire, they had a bell they rung at the fire hall, which was behind 638 back there, service station. And they ring the bell, and volunteers would run in, and they would have to bring the boiler and get the horses at one location and go get the fire apparatus as another. So it had to come together, get all this stuff together to get to the fires.
Well, that's why things burn down.
Those things burned.
Yeah.
But fire trucks, I read one time that they didn't have tops on them because they wanted to be able to see up. But I don't know. Paul may know why.
Okay, Paul,
I
why
don't
did they
remember.
not
I
have
read up
tops
on that
on
one
those
time
fire
and I
trucks?
forgot.
But the one he is driving is new. It's just the same engine company. Oh, okay. Paul's saying that it's the same engine company that he's driving. I misunderstood that. But how long? But we've got questions for you, Paul. Why did they have fire engines that didn't have the top on them? And about how long do those engines last? So we're going to put
Also,
you to
another
work
thing,
today, Paul.
Used to, the driver was on the opposite side, like in England.
Oh, really?
On the early
Okay,
fire
Paul,
trucks.
that's another one. Why were they on the opposite side?
And I'd always heard or read somewhere they want to know how close to pull up to the sidewalk or the building or something. But I don't know.
Well,
if
that
that's
does
true.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the mail carriers. They have to drive on theirs is on the opposite side too.
I remember I went to a fire call out in the county, and one of the little towns, I won't name which one, they brought their fire truck, and they rush in there, and they all jump off, and they start to pump the truck. There's no water in the truck. It leaked out in the station.
Oh, no. But,
I know the county fire department, I was dispatching one time, and the fire truck went out. One went to the right, one went to the left. They got their instructions mixed up. And then another time, he turned so sharp, he turned the truck over. It was a tank truck, had a big tank on the back of it, old type, and he just turned it right over in the middle of Memorial down there.
that's wild. Well, I know Paul's son actually on the ice had one flip on him, got on its side, but it's just because of the ice or something. I think it was the ice or the rain or some kind of something with the slip
Well, I remember we
roads.
flipped one on a country road. It got off in the ditch and just turned over like you
Yeah.
talking about yesterday. You all turned over.
Yeah, so
But
it
it
happens.
happens, yeah.
So we're just continuing to give you edge on the side of caution, guys. Pay attention if you are. I know it's real tempting. I'm one of those people. If I've got things to do and this kind of stuff comes in, it frustrates me. I want to go get my stuff done. If you get out there in it, because it's as clear as a bell right now as far as what I could see, and if you look at the radar, it does look like we have a dome over us that's protecting us. But Paul Rainey says it has started to snow up in Hendersonville. It does
So
look
15
like
minutes, if it doesn't snow, we're coming after him.
yeah, he says they're getting it in Hendersonville,
yeah.
so I'm not sure. But nonetheless, I mean, we are greatly anticipating this stuff coming in. The temperatures aren't quite as cold as we thought they were going to be. And that can make a big difference. So,
Yeah.
you know, we'll see. We'll see. But my kiddos at school, they're just like, oh, we want to be out all next week. If we don't, if we don't get enough accumulation, it won't happen. So come on.
I didn't think they'd. I thought pretty sure they wouldn't go Monday and maybe not Tuesday, but now I think they might go Monday.
Yeah.
Unless this thing changes.
Yeah. Unless it just.
But as warm as it is, it's gonna
Yeah.
melt off. It'd be good sledding weather because it's
Yeah.
icy, wetty.
Yeah.
Sleds do good on that. So
Yeah. So we'll just have to see, guys. Just hang tight and keep your eyes on the weather.
we used to go to the
super
middle
careful.
school. We used to
Yeah.
be the high school and slide down those hills.
Yeah.
And when we were kids, and I had many times like that. Since then, we had a lot of.
Yeah, and we had a lot of opportunities to do that when I was a kid too, and we loved it. We would love to get out. We would get out on the roads and get our. We had 3-wheelers.
Yeah.
Those were more dangerous. We had 3-wheelers in instead of the 4-wheelers they have now, and they were a little more dangerous, of course. But the 45 highway was being built whenever I was in high school. That goes between Paducah and Mayfield.
Did it not exist before that?
No, well, it did, but it was 2-lane.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's still there, and I don't know what they call it now, but it was the original 45 highway. And so it was down, probably half mile from our house. But then they came in and they put in the big 4-lane highway, and it comes right. It actually took some of our farmland. It would have taken more if it hadn't been for a very old cemetery on our property that prevented that from happening. And so they didn't want to have to move it, and so they kind of stayed over to the side. And so that saved some of our land from eminent domain on that. But it comes right by the farm now. And when they were building that, they couldn't keep us off of it because we would go out there, and when it snowed, we would really go crazy and get up there on those where they were, dozing and all of that. And oh my goodness, we had some fun. It's a wonder we had, we hadn't gotten hurt. Okay, now Paul's saying it's not snowing yet. He thought it was. So,
Oh, goodness.
But okay, and Paul is saying he drove one without a top. Was the first one he drove. And they run them until they just stop running, is what he's saying, how they long. But do you have an average time that those engines last, though, Paul? But so he's saying he drove one without a top. Is there a reason why why they didn't have a top?
Well, Springfield's got one that's pretty old. They still
Yeah.
use there.
Okay.
I guess that's what they do. They drive them until they're going to have trouble with them.
Okay.
They're built very good.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, so yeah, we're sitting here. We're anticipating that snow coming in, and I'm looking at the radar. It looks a lot like rain. I don't know. Bill. I don't know, man. I even got my Stormy Comer on. It's not quite warm.
I'm going to get fussed at, I know.
Yeah, I know. We all will. But it's not quite cold enough for this old hat. But I just didn't feel like getting up and getting ready this morning. So it was a cap day. But because after being in Kentucky last night, and again, thank you to everybody that put that on up in at Graves County High School. That was a blast last night, getting to see my old teammates, and it was a lot of fun.
By the way, if anybody wants some weather history, I keep Robinson County weather history from the 1800s.
That is
until now.
fascinating.
So it takes me a while to find it, but
Yeah.
if they're really needing to know something, I might have it.
Yeah.
I have the major events I know, like heavy snow or a tornado, something like that.
I need to look up exactly when it was that, because I was telling you that there was the event where they had the ice that came in that shut down the farm we live on was a big dairy
In Kentucky, though.
No, I'm talking about right here.
Oh,
I'm talking about
okay.
right here. The farm. that
So
my
what
husband-
range? What year range? 1990
I feel like it had to have been
to
I think it was
2000?
maybe in the 60s or 70s.
Okay.
But they said that
There was one in the 60s, and I was at college.
Yeah,
away
I
from
think
there.
it was in the 60s.
But I remember it was one then,
But
63 or something like that.
the guy who came down to our farm said they were actually living there at the time, and when they would milk, they couldn't transport the milk out, and so they ended up dumping a bunch of milk down in the hollow there, down by the creek. And then they couldn't. They would have to hand milk, and then Fort Campbell came in with the big helicopters to bring them some generators, so they would be able to milk. And so, I mean, that was real interesting.
You mentioned that yesterday. I should have looked that up, and I just
But I'll
didn't
get
think
you
of
the
it.
year on that and some more specifics because when they came up to talk to us, my husband wrote down a lot of notes.
Do you remember what month it was?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't. I was in the middle of something when they popped in. You know how you have an unexpected visitor, and I was in the middle of a task. And so I was trying to get some things done because we were, it was like, we're busy all the time. So it was a day that we had at home and we were trying to get some things done. And I just did not have time to sit down for an hour and visit,
I'll find it.
So but Mark took the time to sit down and talk. But it was quite interesting. And Paul is saying that he remembers having to tie hoses to the back of an engine and drag them back to the fire hall because they were frozen.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. I hadn't thought of that.
Because they would get frozen when you're out.
Yeah, that did happen, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. But
I don't remember what we did, but we didn't do that.
Yeah. But,
They wouldn't be worth a flip when they got back dragging on the ground.
Yeah. I don't know, but that's the thing. He worked up in, I guess he worked in Nashville the entirety of his 40 plus year tenure. But we're sitting here hoping that rain will turn to snow very soon. We want to all get a good snow in. I think we're all ready for a good snow. But man, that's an awful lot of green in there, Bill.
I know. I don't think it's going to snow while I'm here.
I don't know, man. I'll tell you. But anyway,
it's not going to snow before 8 o'clock, I guess.
Well, I was looking at it earlier too, and they're saying maybe about 10 o'clock now. And my principal, she's going to say, "See, I told you."
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of people saying
There's
that.
going to be a lot of people saying that if we don't get that big snow.
And then when the real one does come, they won't be ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. But now Paul's saying we're getting flurries now, so I don't know. It's so funny, but I think a lot of us that are in the school systems, we're like, come on, because you come back from something like Christmas break, and you're really more tired than when you left.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had all the holiday stuff. And I told my husband, I said, I'm just excited. I'm just excited we might get a little bit of a break, that I'm not having some kind of stupid surgery. Because I had all these, because I did all of this joint repair. I had a lot of arthritic type surgeries over the last year. And I did them all during the breaks. I didn't miss any school. And thank you very much. The only time I missed school this past year was I got the flu one time and had to stay home. And then, I've maybe left early for appointments or something like that, but I didn't miss because of my surgery. So there you go. And so I did it all during the break. So I was kind of hoping for a few days off, that I didn't have, some kind of stupid doctor's appointment. But Bill sat down. Bill Jones is here. And I invited him in. Normally, we would be talking with Jack Martin. This is the second Friday of the month. I didn't even call and talk to Jack because I knew his son was going to be super busy with fire department up in Nashville. And I also, too, it's one of those things, like we said, we want people to stay off the roads. Bill and I live just literally up the street from the radio station. He lives closer to it than I do. I live about 2 miles away, and you don't even live a mile away, really.
I can walk here.
Yeah, you can walk here. So that's why it's a safe bet for he and I to come in and just let you know, the snow's not here yet. Temperature's a little warmer than we thought they were going to be. Who knows? And it just, again, I will never apologize for saying be super cautious. Whenever things were looking the way it was looking over the last couple of days, you need to stay in and just see what's going to happen. You maybe get some things done this morning. But if and when it turns, it can turn very fast. So keep that in mind. We had fun yesterday. I had one of my students come in, and we did a snowcast, and just to basically let everybody know, because of the canceling school today, that means our graduation has been moved to next weekend for winter graduation. So we were supposed to have practice and what they call senior walk and honorary diplomas, all this kind of thing today. And then tomorrow at 10 was the scheduled graduation. Well, that's now been moved to everything will be Friday and Saturday next week. And so we put that up in a little
Did you have that when you were in school, winter graduation?
No.
I didn't either. I wonder when it started.
I actually asked Mary Cook, who is the principal over at East Robertson. I asked her about that. I had her in on Tuesday. And we were talking about that, and she had. It really hasn't been that long that they've done that, But what they did is they originally had it where they would take every school in the county would come together at the center. And, like we have maybe 20 or 30. They're graduating early. So we'd bring our 20 or 30. Joe Burns would bring theirs, East Robertson, Springfield, White House Heritage. We'd all come together with our groups, and then each school would take their turn. Well, it got to be too much. And so what they did is they decided to let the schools handle it themselves. And so now, just like we have our own graduations, and we have to, schedule those. And I would imagine some of the early graduations were able to happen because I think there was one scheduled for last night, maybe. I'm not sure, but I kind of think Springfield's may have been last night. So they've maybe have already had theirs. But ours has been moved because with school being called off today, they have moved it to next Saturday at 10 a.m. So just be advised of that. So, yeah, where's the snow?
Bowling Green's getting it.
Bowling Green getting it right now?
Yeah.
So, why is yours showing looks more like rain than mine does? I mean, when I pull my radar up, yours looks more like snow.
Which one? What
I'm
app
pulling
are
up
you
that
using?
one of yours. I'm pulling up that one that you gave me, but it's just it's more green than blue, and that indicates rain, correct?
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
Yeah, but yours is more. Are you watching the same one? Yeah,
I don't know. Mine is radarscope.com.
Yeah.
Is that what
I think that's what I've got.
Okay.
But yeah, radar scope. But mine's showing a little more looking like a.
Well,
rain and
it also how close you got it too. I think.
Yeah. Well, one thing too is you look at that. It looks like some of the activity has dissipated a little bit. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it looks like it.
I mean, so that's the thing. But we'll see, guys. We'll see.
But that's going northeast. This dome so-called thing, it's going northeast, so should
move
come
on
in
out.
here pretty soon.
Yeah. So just get ready, guys. The snow's coming. It really is. It really is. We're going. I hope.
Yeah.
At this point, we're like, okay, we're hoping because we've really built it up. But anyway, you just do the best you can. So anyway, and let's see.
I was
Paul Rainey's saying Sumner County had their early graduation yesterday, but and I guess they do a combined one. But I know up here in Robertson County, I'm not sure which ones have had theirs and which ones haven't. But we're just trying to get them done, y'all, and get these early graduates out of here. And several of the kiddos that are a lot of the times those early graduates, they're planning on going into a trade type education immediately. I had one of the kiddos.
that's a good thing.
There's some of them are going into the military, and they're wanting to get a jump start on that. And so these are kids that are usually pretty ambitious and just have got a good plan. And so you have to be really proud of them. And but I miss them. I've got 4 that I had ever since I've started teaching, and I hate to see them go because they're just I love those kids, and so it's hard to see them leave. But
I had an aunt that was a professor of English up in Kentucky, over in eastern Kentucky, at a university, and she told me back in the 60s when she was teaching, she said, I knew if anybody failed, any of the boys failed, they were going directly to Vietnam. And he says, I had a hard time failing.
Man.
So I tried she said she tried everything in the world to get them to pass.
Wow.
So she felt like she'd be responsible for them to go and get killed.
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine being a teacher during that time. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
That's a thought I never thought of.
I had never even thought about that. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Because, because the friend that I lost, Kenneth, he went right in out of school.
Mm-hmm.
And he was drafted. He didn't sign up, but, and he wasn't there 6 months, it seems like.
I remember I was in you had to go get a medical before you went into the military. And I remember going to a bank basement over in Nashville, in downtown. I forget what bank it was. And they were all these boys with me, going through for medicals. And one guy in front of me had a middle toe growing out of the top of his foot. Just back about that far. And he said, I have to have special shoes and everything. He said, they're not going to take me. They took him.
Really?
I couldn't. That scared me. I thought, good night.
If you got something like that going on and they still bring you in, that's wild. Well, they just they
guess they'd have to make a special shoe for him or something. I don't know. But
oh my goodness.
they were taking anybody and everybody.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. But that's what we're talking about today, guys. We're anticipating the snow coming in. Just keep your eyes on the weather forecast as it comes through. The forecast that we're still getting. I mean, I was pulling up Channel 5 right now and just kind of seeing what they've got. They're kind of like probably my favorite of the TV stations. But, they're still, calling for a 3 to 6 inch accumulation. So
I don't see anything out there,
Yeah,
but it
I
looks
don't think-
it looks like here on the radar it should be here just any minute.
yeah, should be here anytime, guys. So get ready and be super careful. Those temperatures, there's some forecast that has us at 32 for a high today. And you got to keep in mind, and some that are going 33 and 34. And if you get that, you could end up with a little bit of rain in
Yeah.
there. And the thing you've got to remember, though, is the ground is super cold because we had such cold
It's
temperatures.
been cold for several
Yes,
days, so it's hard.
And so because of that, when it hits, it's going to stick. So whatever we do get is going to be around now with us getting some sunshine. We were talking about it's forecasted to warm up just a bit on Sunday, but now they're saying the high of 36 and sunny. I mean,
Yes, it's
that's
supposed to warm up on Sunday afternoon. So
Sunday afternoon, but if it's in the afternoon, if it's late in the day, it won't do a whole lot to melt it, I don't think. Do you? Or
well, if it doesn't get any colder much, and it doesn't seem like it is,
Yeah.
it'll melt off pretty quick.
Yeah,
And
so
we're
who
not
knows,
getting
guys?
the amount.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see it. It's timing. That's how it happens, and you just never know. And but we are again telling you to use extreme caution out there on the roads today, because it's coming on in here, and this is that very deceptive thing that got us in Nashville when we were telling the story about when my kids were probably 5th and 6th grade. And I know I've had several people remember this with their kids. It just wasn't looking bad that morning. And they probably got up and looked at a forecast very similar to what we're looking at. It looks like it's some rain. It's like, so they sent them on into school, thought we can get a half day in, we can count it. And by the time they still got them on the buses and started heading home, buses were getting stranded. And those are
That
the kinds of
happened here
things-
one time, I
Yeah.
remember recently.
And that is the reason why we use such extreme caution, and we don't play with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're not making excuses.
Well,
We're
you
just
can
telling
imagine
you have to be
A
careful.
school superintendent, and they call the weather service, and it's not going to snow, and there's a dome type thing that nobody can predict,
Yeah.
and they get caught. They're going to get chewed on, by the parents.
Oh, I know.
That's
So,
bad.
but anyway, Paul's chiming in. We were talking about Vietnam and the things that we're talking about. Kind of here's how they connect. We are supposed to be having our winter graduation today. Well, preparations for it today, and then having it tomorrow. We've had to postpone that because of the weather, and we got to talking about the stress of being a teacher during a time like Vietnam, and you want to make sure your kids that you had in school pass and do the things they need to do academically to keep them from having to go to war. And you were talking about whenever you went through your time, and you enlisted though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or did you get drafted?
No,
Paul apparently
they were
got-
going to draft.
Well, see,
just went on ahead of time.
Paul Rainey was just saying, we were talking about the things they would take. Paul has a limp. He's had it his whole life, as far as I know, and they didn't take him because of the limp. And so he got turned away on, and I guess in his Vietnam era for sure, I would imagine. But yeah, so I mean, you just never know. You just never know. That's quite interesting. All kinds of things we're going to talk about today, guys, because we just really didn't know what to expect. Yes, I'm in my winter attire. This is my Stormy Cromer. If you don't know what Stormy Cromer is, these are hats that are made up in Wisconsin, and they're hand.
You told me about
they're
that once
nice
before,
hats,
yeah.
boy, and they're just kind of iconic in that area.
I got one with the ears on it like that.
Yeah, you can get this style, but I think the originals came from Stormy Cromer, and they're just kind of a big thing up in the area where my husband's from, and so you got to have a Stormy. That black hat. They have fancy ones too. The more dress hat that I had on earlier in the week, because I've had my shoulder replaced, and so I can't really fix my hair or put my makeup on. That was the one thing. I was at the thing last night. Everybody goes, LaVern, you look so tired. And it's like, well, I can't really do my makeup and stuff. And I'm like, so you just kind of get limp through until you get your arm movement back fully. But something I wanted to talk to Bill about. We started since the weather's just kind of on hold for a minute. You sit down and you were talking about what you're doing in your Bible class at church. So tell us about that, because if somebody wants to come in and join y'all on that series,
What
think
I
it'd be a lot
enjoy
of fun.
studying Bible customs, figures of speech, that
Right.
type of thing, because when you read the Bible, and it was written by Eastern people, way back, we have a Western style of thinking. So when we read it, it doesn't make sense to us because we're not thinking like they think. They totally understood it. We don't. So this Bible I was talking about, I use as a King James, and I'm so used to King James, I have no problem with it. But I can see why somebody new.
Yeah.
It would be because there's words in there that are archaic.
It's
It's not used.
right.
Right.
But the reference Bible that you gave
Yeah.
me, it's
But the
fabulous.
references, the guy that wrote yours is Bullinger. He wrote that 1900.
Uh-huh.
And so he was closer to knowing the Bible customs back then. So he explains in the footnotes, and everybody will have one of these Bibles.
Yeah,
It's
I agree.
great because it's just full of footnotes. I don't see how that man did what he did in a lifetime, but he had a team of people. But anyway, that Bible is really good. The newer versions and translations, what they do, they try to pick out words that explain what that is saying, and a lot of times it misses it. You miss the whole point. Just like I said in Song of Solomon, Solomon is talking about his lover and he calls her a heifer,
Yeah.
a cow. And back then, cows were very valuable and they thought highly of, and so that was a compliment.
Yeah.
He also said her hair was like goats in the field.
Yeah.
And goats back then, they were just white. There's white sheep and black goats. It wasn't multicolored like now.
Yeah.
And so their hair was long, and so in a distance you could see the hair waving, and he was describing her hair
Yeah.
by what he saw from the goat herd.
Yeah,
So,
that's funny. I remember that and you're thinking, that don't sound awesome. But
so there's a lot of things like that. And
Right.
I wrote some down here, I brought in. It's just like in 1 Peter 1:13, it says, "Wherefore gird up the loins of your mind."
Okay, explain
Now,
that one.
In the Bible times, when people worked in the field, they were farmers, and they would have an ox or a cow pulling a plow, and they would have their, long robes on is what they wore. So you couldn't walk very easily or very fast with that robe hanging down around your ankles. So they would pull that robe up and tie it with a sash or something around their waist, and that's when they girded up their loins. Because they wanted to run or work as a farmer, and the farmer would have a long stick about 8 feet long. It was called a goad, and some translations call a prick. And you remember Jesus Christ mentioned in Acts, and I think I've got that down here somewhere, about he came to Paul, and he called him Saul back then, and he said, "Why are you
Strike against the
against the pricks, against the goads?" And a goad was used to direct an animal, especially a young one that hadn't been trained to go. It was used to direct the animal one way or the other, or prick them in their back to make them go on.
We called it hot sticks whenever we were.
Yeah, that's right. And so the farmer would have a little rein, in one hand, this goad, a stick in the other hand, and his loins girded up. So in 1 Peter, when it says that, of course, we wouldn't know what he was talking about unless we understood how they did that. He says, "Whereas gird up your loins of your mind," mean get your mind ready to learn, ready to go.
Right.
And so that when you learn, when you know that, understand it, it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
Gives more explanation in the Bible. The Bible's full of that kind of stuff. And I mentioned to you earlier, some versions, I think King James does, talks about unicorns in the Old Testament.
That's one I've got to.
Now, let me tell you something interesting about that.
I want to hear this.
Of course, when they were translating Hebrew, and the word is Neem, is unicorn, but when they got to that word, they said, well, it means a one-horned animal. We'll call it unicorn. And it could have been any kind of animal with a horn, and there were some like that. But the funny thing about it, they changed it immediately. After King James, they changed it to ox. So all your translations you read, it'll be an ox instead of unicorn.
Okay.
But the funny thing, in 2018, archaeologists found a skeleton of a unicorn, an animal with a horn right out of the top of his head. Now, rhinoceros has got a horn off of the snout, but this was right out of the top of the head. And they found one. I think they probably need to find one or two more to be certain about that, but
That's interesting.
it is. I'm not saying
Yeah.
the Bible is promoting unicorns, but I'm just saying sometimes if you read up on what you're reading, you don't understand it. You need to look a little further in Bible customs. Or I've got 5 or 6 different books on Bible customs. I found out the oldest book are the better
Yeah.
because I got one by Dr. Mackey, Mackie, and he lived in the 1800s in Syria, and he documented all their customs there. And books later that were written by people who were writing about what they heard somebody else say is not as good as Mackey's. Mackey's is more accurate. And it's called Bible Customs and Manners, or Bible Manners and Customs, I
I
think.
think I've got several as well, and I've got a whole stack of them. I just love that stuff.
You know, I read one thing the other day. If you go out there today, you go out and see these nomads in the desert, and they have in a tent, and they have a generator and a TV.
Oh, how funny! It's different.
So,
yeah.
you know,
Different world.
but it's really interesting to understand Bible customs. Then when you get into figures of speech, that is really more interesting than that. But to do all of that, it just opens up so much understanding in the Bible, because we are looking at a Western thought and an Eastern writing, and it just opens up so much, and it makes you feel like you really understand it. But anyway, look at some
When
of
are you doing this class? If somebody wanted to come in,
Wednesday night
so
Bible
it's a
study
Wednesday
at
night Bible
North
study,
Springfield Baptist.
North Springfield Baptist.
6
What
o'clock.
time? 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting
Now,
class to pop.
here's
in
another
on.
one. Cast your bread upon the water. You've heard that
Of course.
in the Bible.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
I'm not really.
Well, you don't know. What does that mean? Well, you can go and throw your loaf of bread out on,
Yeah,
on a lake, you know. But what that means is they had growing seasons, which is different than ours. They had the latter rain and the former rain. The former rain was like in October, November.
Right.
Latter rains in the spring. So in the summertime and into the fall, the ground became very hard because it didn't have any rain much. And so it started raining in October, November. That's when they planted their seeds. And what they did, they would wait till it rains, and then it would have a scratch plow. You know what a scratch plow is, I guess. You don't dig down deep with it. It just scratches the surface. Because the ground's so hard, it would just scratch the surface. So they would come in there, and while it's wet, they'd throw their seed on the wet ground and scratch plow it into dirt. So that's why I cast your bread. The seed, like say, for instance, they were growing wheat, and they harvested in the spring, and they would turn that into bread, you know, where they could eat. And say they had a bad harvest, and you had to keep some of that seed back so you could plant them. And so, but everybody's hungry. The children are hungry, and so they had one scripture. I think I said
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Okay.
it says in Psalms 126:5, "They that sow in tears shall reap in joy." Thank you.
In case you need it.
So it says, "They that sow in tears reap in joy." What does that mean? They were sowing in tears because they had to sow their seed instead of eating it, making bread out of it, and they reap in joy in the spring when the wheat would come back.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
You know, boy, it's snowing now. Boy, it's going good.
Is it? Oh, yep, there it is, guys. Okay, here it comes. Here comes the snow.
So there's so many things like that. We've been doing it for last 2 or 3 weeks. Now I'm going to do it probably some more. Now this coming Wednesday night I won't. It's got something else going on.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff like that in the Bible, and I just
I love it.
Loves me to look. I mean, I really enjoy looking it up.
If you look at the tabs I have open on my computer during my free time, that's what I do. I mean, if you go. When I'm sitting down having my lunch at school, I'm usually listening to something from Ray Vanderlaan or Marty Solomon or some of these guys who I do a lot of their studies. Have you ever studied Kenneth Bailey?
No.
Kenneth Bailey is a good one, and he's long
You've
gone.
mentioned that before.
He's long gone, but you can Google him.
I looked it up one time, but I never
you
did.
can Google
do
Kenneth
anything.
Bailey, and there's somebody has taken some of his videos and put them up, and they've put them out on YouTube. And so there's some of his lectures, and they're just as dry as they can be, but they're full of information, and they are fascinating. And he teaches an awful lot on the issues of women in the church, and you know that's a hot topic for me. And so I want to see what he has to say about it. And he is the one where I got the information about Junia versus Junius. And where Paul is talking about, it says Greek Junia, chief among the apostles, or honored among the apostles. And he had said that in around the 3rd century is when they changed the word, they changed the name from the feminine form to the masculine form, because it was talking about a female apostle.
I knew about that.
And there were early church leaders that thought that just couldn't be real. Well, there are some commentaries prior to the 3rd century that actually talk about, look, ladies, this is a woman that you can pattern your life after. She was considered an apostle. And so what a difference that would make if that were translated and taught that way now. And
you look in the one I gave you, that King James, there was a woman in the New Testament that was called a deacon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But and then other times, if you look at the Greek word, which you can in that Bible, there's the same word they changed to a servant. So you don't know what they mean, servant or deacon. They changed the translators.
The word that they use to describe her is the same word they use to describe Timothy.
Right.
And so, and that's the thing. And that's a point that Dr. Bailey makes. And isn't it Phoebe that's the deacon? I don't have my notes in front of me.
I don't remember.
As much as I've studied this, I have it right on top of my head. But that is one of those things that you can't make that stuff up. When you're using the same word to describe Timothy, and you're saying, okay, he is the leader of the church in Ephesus, and you're using the same word to describe Phoebe, and you're trying to make her a deaconess and give her like a sub, position, because you're not comfortable with her being named in the same capacity as Timothy is being named. But that is what it is. It's the same word used to describe her that is Timothy. And I just don't see how in the world we've let it get so. Well, I mean, I know why, is because we've taken out of context the things that Paul said about women be silent in the church. I don't allow women to have authority over a man. All of those things, we've taken all that out of context, and we've made that the law. And it's, to me, it's just something that needs to be fixed.
Telling someone yesterday, if you take a Greek course, the first Greek 101, they have you translating John, book of John first, and you think, how can I do that? But the way they do it's very easy. They have a parsing guide, Parsing, and it's a book. And when you look at the first Greek word in John or whatever you are, it'll give you the Greek word, and it'll give you all the English words that's used out of that word. Mm-hmm. So you just pick one. And I thought, well, somebody's been going along translating, picking words, and that may be okay, and it may not be.
Yeah.
But using customs and idioms and figures of speech,
context is huge.
It will
Context
change things.
is huge, and that's the same thing in the world we live in today. How many times have you got somebody that you support in the media and in the political world or in the spirit? I mean, you can have preachers too that will get taken out of context. Somebody will say something from the pulpit, and somebody will take it wrong. And they'll say, well, did you hear he said, or this, she said, this is this. And they'll take it completely out of context.
Well, just like the unicorn thing, I don't want to.
Exactly.
Unicorns
to us are mythical. Did you hear what Bill Jones was saying on the radio today?
They're mythical creatures. They didn't exist, but that was the word they came up with because they couldn't describe it any other way. But I'm not saying they're unicorns.
No, but you're saying that there was something that they have found archaeological. They have found this animal that had, and of course that could have been a deformity too.
That's why I say they need to find several more.
I mean, I think all of us that have had livestock have had some crazy. We had hogs, and sometimes you'd have hogs that were born in, all kinds of. I don't know that we ever did on our farm, but I can remember like a 2-headed pig being born somewhere near the farm I grew up on, and things like that. So I mean, you had those kinds of deformities that happen. And sometimes some of the things that they dig out of the ground that look odd, that are animals or people, we got to remember there were deformities back then too. And, because it's a fallen world. Y'all.
Another thing over the New Testament talks about when Jesus Christ comes back, he'll have the sheep and goat judgment. Well, what does that mean?
Well, because, now this one, I had a devotional on this just recently with Ray Vanderlaan. and he was talking about how that the goats will come in and disrupt what the sheep are
Right.
doing. The sheep are more they'll stay in their herd, they'll stay together, and you got one goat coming in, it'll just mess all that up. And so you won't see as many goats as you do sheep because
So
they will follow the shepherd.
He's using
more.
a figure of speech there.
Yeah.
They all knew
Yeah.
goats did that, like
Yeah.
you were saying. We don't. No, most people don't.
Yeah, if you haven't worked
And
in
the sheep
livestock.
doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So the sheep were the righteous and the goats were the unrighteous.
Yeah.
And so he going to do a judgment.
Yeah.
So, but I had so many people look at me and said, "What's a sheep and a goat got to do with
Yeah.
it? You know, what's he doing with animals?" But it's not, it's just a figure of speech using that illustration to describe what he's doing. And they all knew when he's, was written, they knew what he's talking about. We don't. We have to go back and sort of retrograde and see what some of these customs were.
And it's interesting. It's just if you want to study this would be a really good place to go and talk to Bill and join them on their Wednesday night Bible class and kind of get your feet wet with that. And once you do, you're going to just want to know more and more and more.
Another thing I'm coming up with is the difference between translations and versions.
Okay.
Because you got the King James versions,
Right.
and you have Bibles who are thought oriented and Bibles who are literally word oriented
Okay.
translations, and
okay.
you got to know what they're doing there so you'll understand.
Well, the Message would be a translation. The Message Bible is one that's been trying to. I mean, the Message is one that I'm not a real big fan. It's okay, but it's so contrary. I mean, it's so different than what I'm accustomed to. But a lot of people just absolutely love it, and they'll maybe sometimes if you're trying to explain something and you're having a hard time explaining it maybe to teens, you can go to the Message and you can read it and go like, okay, that's okay, and use it and it's all right. But I think you have to use those. But it is a translation. It is a translation in modern language that you have. But it's definitely one you have to really read cautiously. I think. But have you looked at it much?
No,
Message,
I don't like it.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't either.
I just tell you.
But working with kiddos, they mention it a lot. My kids, will go to it. And I worked in the youth, group for a while at my church. And so you have a lot of kids that go to it. So you kind of have to have an understanding of it and where they're coming from. Because sometimes they'll say something, where'd you get, and it'll be something out of the message.
Well, that's a problem. And,
Yeah.
and so many older people, they don't believe there's anything any good except King James version.
Yeah.
And some religious groups will only use King James.
Yeah. I know.
I understand.
And I'm not a fan
But-
of the King James Version, but I know that.
Oh, I am. Because of the customs and things like
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
talking about here, it tells in the other NIV, they try to make an explanation of something they don't understand to start with.
Right,
So
right.
it
Yes.
throws you off.
Yeah. And I mean,
Best to have several translations.
that's what I'm saying, and I think that's key as well. Paul is chiming in here. He said he's actually seen a picture of a goat with a horn in the middle of its head.
Okay, Paul.
There you go, because it's just a deformity. It was a birthday.
And he was
cake.
driving a fire truck, right?
No, yeah, exactly. But anyway, I'm talking with Bill Jones. He is our local historian, local weather, of course, with the weather, being what it is today. It is really
I tell you
coming
what,
down
on,
out there
on
now.
history,
So-
I was down at the gun store down on Hill Street yesterday,
Yeah.
and a guy walked in. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he's old like me.
Uh-huh.
He sat down there, and Jack Hollingsworth sitting over there, and we started telling stories. And I said, y'all remind me of things I hadn't thought of.
See, I
and
love
we're all
that,
telling stories, and it was really good, because
And how many of you were there?
it was 3 of us in there.
Oh,
and-
why don't you bring them in here and let's start talking one
Well,
day.
one lives in Hendersonville. He won't
Wouldn't
be.
that be fun? That would
But
be
anyway,
that would be
when
a fun
you're
show.
older, you have all these stories of things growing up, that you heard or saw or knew, and it's so interesting because I said, I haven't told that in a long time because nobody's reminded me of it.
That's great.
But it's good stuff,
That's
It's,
funny. Well,
and-
getting with my friends last night from the basketball team, that was the thing.
yeah.
We haven't seen each other in so many years. And then we would somebody say, oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I had that happen with one of my friends. And I said something. She was like, I'd forgotten about. Well, we were talking about, because the snow was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about our coach our Coach Long was no joke, man. He was an excellent coach. And he would have us practicing in the snow. He would bring us into the gym in terrible snowstorms. And I mean, treacherous roads. They wouldn't let us do that now. But we were talking about some of the things that would happen when we were going to those practices in the snow, because a lot of the time it would be right on the edge of tournament time. And he's like, you guys got to come in and practice because we got tournament game as soon as this stuff melts. You know, it's about 5 till, and I need to talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards.
Go ahead.
It just goes quick now, but I'm saying, while we've been sitting here, guys, there was nothing when I walked in here. The roads are already starting to get covered, and I'm out here in my little Camry. So, I mean, yeah, it's already.
It's coming down.
I'm looking at the driveway across the street, and
I see 5 inches already.
Yeah, look at you. But I'm already seeing some pretty decent ground cover. So this old girl needs to get that little Camry back in its garage, back under cover, because that is not going to be something I'm going to want to be tooling around in. But I felt pretty confident pulling out on the highway with it, because I thought, well, it doesn't look like now it's coming in until about 10. That's what we're saying, guys. You just got to be careful. Now, I've come up here in my Camry, and I have to have my husband come get me. I don't think so. I think I can still get home. Let's talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. I was pulling up Rebecca's Facebook page. First thing she has on her post, she says, you don't have to wait until you're ready to sell to call me. Contact me anytime to talk about your plans and how I can help. And her number is 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. And that is one of those things that we talk about a lot. Maybe it's just something in the back of your mind. I don't really know when's the right time for me to sell. I don't really know when's the right time for me to move. I don't really know when the right time is for me to buy. You have a lot of questions. And, I love it when they're out in the community. If there's a community event and there's going to be tables and tents and all those kinds of things, if it's in their area, if they're possibly able to be there, Barry and Rebecca are going to be there, and it's a wonderful opportunity just to sit down and talk to them. You don't have to wait for those events, guys. Rebecca's office is up in the White House area. They live in Cross Plains. They've been there for nearly 30 years, so they are Robertson Countyans, Cross Plainians, and they specialize in Robertson County properties, but they're from Kentucky like me. They've worked all over. Barry had a long career up in Nashville as a media marketing vice president for nearly 17 years. So he's worked all over. They know this area so well, and the areas even beyond. And Barry is the broker here locally. So whatever your questions are, buying, selling, whatever side of the table, maybe you just don't even know how much house you can afford. They can help you with that. And they're wonderful folks. They're dear friends of this program, good friends of mine, and cannot recommend them enough. But if you want to check them out, just Google them, Barry or Rebecca Richards, Exit Prime Realty. They each have their own Facebook page, their own web pages, and you can connect with them at sellwithbecky.com, BUY-RobertsonCounty.com, sellwithbecky.com, BUY-RobertsonCounty.com. But again, her phone number, 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. Longtime, full-time sponsors of the program. Be sure and let them know that we appreciate them and thank them for sponsoring. One street over.
Snowshoes on.
There it comes, guys. I'm serious, man. It is coming down, and it is covering that road quickly. And yep. This is what we're talking about. And the thing is it's hitting the ground. It is sticking quick because the ground was already so cold. So I don't know, guys. Here we go. So maybe we won't. Maybe people won't be mad at us. Maybe it will come on in here.
Don't give my phone number now.
No.
BR549.
There you go. There's Bill's number, BR549. But and this is something that we mentioned. If you go to my Facebook page, I put up Tyler Monroe is kind of our Renaissance student at Greenbrier. He is an actor. He sings. He plays music. I don't think he plays any sports. But he's just kind of good at everything. He's one of our top. People with ACT. He's one of the smartest kids. And so yesterday, my student that is my primary newsman decided not to come to school, and I had this plan to do this little snowcast, and I put him in a winter hat, and I wanted him to talk about the fact that we're going to have to move to graduation. That's really about the only thing I could be sure of. And so I had Tyler do it. Tyler's been wanting to do news, but he's not in any of my classes. So we pulled Tyler in. So you're going to get to see Tyler Monroe doing the news. And I've got it up on my Facebook page because it's about the graduation. But he also said something in there. And he said, remember that any kind of extracurricular activity is subject for rescheduling. So keep that in mind and talk to your coaches and talk to your advisors and all of that. But now when you look at the newscast, please forgive me. It's a little wonky because I was editing it in the car yesterday on the way back from Kentucky, and it's just I can line those things up better than that. But yeah, it's a little it's angled a little bad. So anyway, so just forgive me for that. But sometimes that happens when you're working quickly. But anyway, he did a great job. But he's our local. If there is a play or anything like that going on, Tyler's going to be involved. He's going to be in the middle of it. And so anyway, but that's up, and we you can go check that out and kind of see what we do. But do forgive me for the crooked framing on that. So I was in a car driving in the middle of the night. Any parting thoughts, Bill?
Well, this is such an unusual snowstorm because it's heavy stuff down in Huntsville and south down there, and in north of us. We're not getting. It's just so. We always see. So it's
you just
part
don't know.
odd.
So do you still think we could get
I just don't know what's going to happen.
like several inches or based on looking at it?
But there's a lot worse south.
Yeah, it's a lot more south. Well, they were saying that from the very get-go that you're going to get more heavy snow south. But, okay.
Better be prepared than not.
That's right, guys. Stay prepared. Stay safe. Stay off the roads. I'm about to take my own advice and take my little Camry and
It's
park
not even wind blowing. It's coming straight down.
It's coming straight down, guys. So be safe out there. The snow's here. Depending on the temps, it'll stay here. We'll see what happens. Thank you guys for joining us. This is 1100 WSGI. God bless. Have a wonderful week. We will